What kind of monsters crush a kid's hand over a skateboard? That's the question that haunted me when I heard about what happened in Sunset Cove, a sleepy coastal neighborhood where palm trees sway and the sunset paints everything gold. It was supposed to be a perfect evening, the kind where kids play outside and parents catch a moment of peace. But for Mike Donovan, a retired Navy SEAL, that evening turned into a nightmare that would change his life and his community forever. Mike was out by his mailbox, tinkering with a stubborn screw, the kind of small task that keeps a man grounded after years of high-stakes missions. His 9-year-old son, Ethan, was tearing down the sidewalk on his skateboard, his laughter bouncing off the quiet street. Ethan's sneakers, scuffed and flashing red and green lights, caught the fading sun as he tried a new trick, wobbling but fearless. Mike looked up, a proud grin spreading across his face. Moments like this, watching his boy just be a kid, were what he fought for all those years. Then it happened. A low, menacing rumble broke the calm. A beat-up black van, no markings, rolled down the street and jerked to a stop right in front of their house. Mike's instincts kicked in, sharp as ever, but before he could move, 2 men jumped out. Their uniforms were a mess, patched together with HOA enforcement scrawled in tacky yellow letters. They didn't walk, they charged, straight for Ethan, boots slamming the pavement. "Stop right there!" one of them barked, his voice thick with fake authority. Ethan, still gliding, froze, his eyes wide with confusion. "No skateboarding! HOA rules! You're trespassing!" the man snapped, waving his hand like he was some kind of cop. Ethan pushed his board back, his voice small but firm. "But I live here. That's my house. My dad's right there." He pointed at Mike, who was already striding forward, a storm brewing in his chest. The men didn't even look at Mike. The bigger one lunged, grabbing Ethan's wrist so hard the boy gasped. "You'll learn to listen," he growled. Mike shouted, sprinting now, but he was a split second too late. A sickening crunch cut through the air, followed by Ethan's scream, a sound that would haunt Mike for years. Ethan's skateboard hit the ground, and he collapsed, clutching his mangled hand. Blood seeped between his fingers, staining his shirt, his face twisted in agony. Mike's world narrowed to one thing: his son, broken and crying. Rage and fear roared inside him as he charged across the lawn. The men backed off, muttering about rules and discipline, their fake confidence crumbling under Mike's glare. He dropped beside Ethan, hands shaking as he checked the damage. Ethan sobbed, trying to be tough, but the pain was overwhelming. Mike dialed 911, forcing his voice to stay calm for Ethan's sake, though every fiber of him wanted to tear those men apart. "Stay with me, buddy," he whispered, his hand steady on Ethan's trembling back. Neighbors started spilling out of their houses, phones in hand, whispers turning to shouts. Someone yelled that the police were coming. Mike's eyes stayed locked on Ethan, seeing the trust in his son's tear-streaked face, trust that his dad would make this right. He stood, grabbing the nearest man's flimsy vest. "What did you do?" he roared, his voice shaking the air. The guy stumbled, his tough guy act gone. His partner fumbled with a cheap badge, but Mike wasn't fooled. He'd seen enough in his career to know these weren't HOA, weren't security, they were frauds. Their sloppy stances, worn-out gear, and sneakers instead of boots screamed amateur. Dangerous amateurs. Mike glanced at Ethan, blood dripping onto the sidewalk, his small body rocking in pain. The rage in Mike's chest burned white-hot, but his training held it in check. "You touched the wrong kid," he said, his voice low, each word a promise. The man squirmed, eyes darting to their van. Sirens wailed in the distance, and the imposter's panic was thick. Mike shoved the man back and knelt beside Ethan. "I'm here," he murmured, his voice breaking. Neighbors closed in, their shock turning to anger. Phones recorded everything, a wave of outrage building. Police cars screeched to a halt, real officers pouring out, their movements crisp and professional. Mike stepped back, letting them handle it. The imposters tried to talk their way out, but one bolted for the van, only to be tackled and cuffed. The other went down after a pathetic struggle. Mike watched, a cold satisfaction settling in. Ethan clung to his shirt, and Mike pressed his forehead against his son's hair. "You're safe now," he promised. In the hospital, the smell of antiseptic hung heavy. Ethan lay pale under harsh lights, his hand wrapped in bandages too big for his skinny arm. For fingers crushed, bones shattered. Surgeries and therapy loomed, with no promise he'd ever use his hand fully again. Mike sat frozen, the news hitting harder than any battlefield wound. His fists clenched, nails digging into his palms. This wasn't just an attack, it was greed, negligence, cowardice. Someone was going to pay. 2 officers came in, their faces grim. The men weren't just fakes, they were ex-security contractors, fired for fraud, with a history of petty crimes and bullying. They'd exploited the HOA's laziness, collecting fake fines while the HOA looked the other way, too cheap to run background checks. Mike's jaw tightened. Those men were the weapon, but the HOA's negligence was the trigger. The next day, while Ethan rested after surgery, Mike got to work. He went door to door, collecting stories from neighbors with the quiet focus of a man who'd planned missions in war zones. Videos poured in, doorbell cams, shaky phone clips. Mike cataloged every detail, building a case with surgical precision. He dug into HOA records, finding gaps that let these imposters run wild. His evidence was ironclad. At the Sunset Cove Community Center, the HOA's emergency meeting packed the room. Parents held their kids close, seniors leaned forward, tension crackling in the air. Mike stepped up, a thick folder in hand, and the room went silent. He laid out his case, timelines, fake IDs, video of Ethan's assault. Each piece hit like a punch. The crowd gasped, then seethed. The HOA president mumbled about miscommunication and bad contractors, but no one bought it. Mike didn't raise his voice, didn't need to. The truth was loud enough. The room exploded. Mothers hugged their kids tighter, fathers nodded grimly. The president's face turned red, his authority dissolving. Mike stood tall, not just a dad but a force. The lawsuit he filed forced the HOA council to resign. He demanded real oversight, mandatory background checks. Prosecutors slammed the imposters with charges they couldn't dodge. Mike was at every hearing, a relentless voice for Sunset Cove. A month later, Ethan sat at the kitchen table, his cast heavy, struggling to hold a spoon in his left hand. Every clumsy move was a fight, but he kept at it, his jaw set. Mike watched, pride and pain twisting together. Ethan's grit was a mirror of everything Mike had taught him about strength. Beyond their home, Mike's fight grew. He started a nonprofit to help families crushed by HOA negligence, offering legal help and a voice for their stories. Families from nearby towns reached out, and a movement took root. Sunset Cove changed. New rules passed, neighbors banded together. At a town hall, the mayor gave Mike a certificate for courage, Ethan by his side. Ethan waved shyly, his smile bright despite the scars. Mike felt a weight lift, a flicker of peace. Justice didn't erase the pain, but it built something stronger: hope. On their porch, Mike watched Ethan kick a soccer ball with his friends, his movements steadier every day. A new sign stood by the mailbox, "Saw protected by Navy veterans saw." It wasn't a threat, it was a promise. Neighbors wanted their own, a mark of Sunset Cove's new resolve. The air felt sharper, united. Mike knew trouble could still come, but standing up changed everything. Ethan scored a goal, his friends cheering. Mike waved, his smile real. This was justice, a kid's laughter, a community's strength. Sunset Cove wasn't an easy target anymore, out while men like Mike stood watch, and hope outshone fear.